I think Sujit is frozen, Vishesh. Yeah, Sujit is not.
Kind of frozen his thing.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
issues. So we are connected. We can start right now, I think. Everyone is ready, right? Okay, cool. So I'm starting the broadcast.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
So, hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I am Sujit Saurabh, founder of Asian City Planners Network, which is an online-based networking platform for city planners in Asia. So I'm here to welcome you all to our first session of the webinar series focused on COVID-19 and perspective of city planners. So the first, this series will be held over next few weeks, and for the first session, our topic is impact of COVID-19 and vulnerable sections of society. So this will be a panel discussion, and we have three wonderful panelists with us today. The very honorable and distinguished planner, Professor Chetan Vaid, and who is currently working as senior planning and architecture, New Delhi, and former director of NIU. And I'm the second is a very well-known person to all the students of planning, and in India particularly, with his humble Srinivas sir, and who is currently the head of Metropolitan and Union Territories Division at Town and Country Planning Organization. Then last but not least, we have Dr. Antonin Chakravarti with us, who is currently working as technical expert in GIZ on issues of sustainable urban development and digitalization process, and also working for the Odisha on smart cities projects. By this, I welcome you all for honoring us with your presence and taking time, especially during this busy schedule and during the pandemic. So without further ado, I will start. Before I set the theme for today, I want to tell all the attendees some ground rules that all attendees will be in listen-only mode. And if during any time of the panel discussion, you can ask questions in the Q&A section for those who are attending through GoToWebinar. And for those who are attending to YouTube Live, you can comment in the comment section so we can ask the questions later. So Asian cities today are like, and in due process of fight over the development, we are currently at a very strange and peculiar public health crisis. So for most of us, this will be a once in a lifetime kind of crisis of this magnitude, where entire world is stranded at home, and those who aren't, those who don't have a home are at the mercy of governments. And as of this week, we have almost 186 countries and more than 3 million people which are affected by this pandemic all over the world. Even in India, we have been tackling this situation since past 3 months. And today, if we assess about 32 states and union territories are affected. Out of 733 districts we have in entire India, about 17% are in red zone and 38% are in orange zone. But we are city planners, and when city planners, as we look closely to the numbers and trends, we see that all these red hotspots or the districts are those majorly are the urban districts or the districts which are shared boundaries of state boundaries in which got affected first. And
Yeah.
furthermore, cities and metropolitan cities, to be precise, are where the entry points to this virus, because this is a migrated virus from the foreign nations. But even before everything started, I mean, even before we have this crisis showing its effects in India, we had about 21.2% of our entire urban employed earners are below the purchasing power parity, which is like $2 a day. So, and also a latest report of UNDP says that in 2019, released on 2019 on topic multidimensional poverty, it says that 19.9% of our total population of India, if we project it to 2017 population, says that those 19.9% of the entire population of India is vulnerable for multidimensional poverty, which are either deprived of health or deprived of education or deprived of standard of living. So this is still very valid even in current crisis. It's not, it didn't disappear, but it is added to the situation and it's aggravated to the current position. So due to COVID, many organizations are estimating in India there would be a loss of over 136 million urban jobs that set millions of migrants to stranded in cities where nowhere possible to go, and we have seen that. As planners, I think we've never planned some elements for them, these migrants or something, that we never had this particular imagination of that crisis will happen. And this has to be done. And World Bank Director of Disaster Management and Risk Resilience says that there will be upward of 100 million so-called new poor that would be adding in the account of this loss of livelihood or jobs and income during this particular pandemic. And about these 100 million people living in cities worldwide will likely to fall in poverty and due to the coronavirus pandemic. And also cities will see a drop of between 15 to 25% of their tax revenues in the next years. So making it difficult for the authorities to invest in improving the slum areas or other infrastructure at the same time while we are tackling this crisis. So COVID-19, if we see, is more than a global health emergency, because it is a systemic human development crisis reflecting our interactions with ecosystem we are part of, and which is already affecting the economic and social dimensions of development in unprecedented ways. So every society, group, individual of the is vulnerable and to adverse events. However, when it comes to shocks such as COVID-19 pandemic, our ability to respond is significantly lower and unequally distributed. So although everyone is potentially affected in one way or another by this pandemic, some individuals or groups of are more vulnerable and suffering far more harm and have much longer road to recovery. And this is our discussion today. So I want to start by giving the stage to Chetan sir to give his open remarks on the theme, that impact of COVID-19 on vulnerable sections of the society. And sir, can you explain who are these vulnerable sections as per your views? And just briefly elaborate that where you are right now and how the state where you are residing right now is tackling the situation. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Sujit. Thank you, Vishesh. Thank you, Trisha. I also want to thank ACPN and NOSPlan. I think I have a very emotional connect with NOSPlan because I was the president of NOSPlan long ago at IIT Kharagpur in 76, 77, and we had initiated this thing, restarted NOSPlan. It was started by SEP sometime in 76, 77. And I, as a director, SP, also supported NOSPlan whenever the opportunity, including attending the Mysore and Delhi conferences. So I am in Kerala, I am in Kochi. And as you all know, Kochi has tackled this issue of COVID-19. I mean, Kerala has tackled this COVID-19 very, very efficiently. And if you ask me what are the reasons, there are two reasons for it. One is traditionally, Kerala has empowered its local bodies. And the second is Kerala has a very strong women's savings group movement called Kudamshri. Kudamshri means happy families. And that movement, with about 40 lakh women members in this, have worked very closely with the local bodies to tackle any problem: delivery services, skill development, construction, savings, livelihood, agriculture. They work on various activities. And traditionally, Kerala has been working on education and health. And moreover, as you all know, Kerala, a lot of people migrate to Gulf. The numbers could be anything between 10 to 35 lakhs. And they live there in very poor conditions. So Keralites are now become very compassionate, benevolent towards this issue of migrants. So they go and work elsewhere. And other people come to Kerala. तो वो लोग दिल से बात करते हैं, दिमाग से बात करने वाली बात नहीं है. दिल पे बात करना पड़ेगा, ये जो problem है. Sujit, you asked me who are these poor? Who are they? Are not one homogeneous group. It's not something you get. This is the poor. No, it's not like that. Within poor migrant, obviously, big problem, big issue. They've suddenly become visible to us. We didn't know the number is so large. And there is no clear definition. They differ by location, skills, community, and state. Many of them do not have a ration card. They cannot get PDS. So my suggestion here is, I'm also giving some suggestions, though you start thinking on those lines. Maybe we should give them an identification and some skills to survive before they come to the city. I mean, some identification. And I worked with Tata Trust in NIUA on a migration project. Debolina was working on it. And I was told that they cannot even buy a SIM card in the city. If there's some identification from their own village, they can at least buy a SIM card, they can go to a health facility, and they can get some PDS ration. This is something we'll have to start immediately. We don't have to wait for things to happen, and this is something which should happen. Again, as far as data is concerned about the poor, we have various methods of collecting data: census, national sample survey, national family plan, health survey. Each one has a different definition. Each one identifies poor differently. I'm sure if you go by NULM, they may have a different definition. Our Housing for All Urban has a different program. So how do we make this information available? One option which is being thought of is a dashboard. Can we have a dashboard at the city level, which is visible to lots of people, and they could take decisions based on this information? That would be my third point. The fourth is, all said and done, we have been talking about inclusive planning. We say inclusive and sustainable urban planning. Unfortunately, we still don't know what is that inclusion plan. Many of our master plans do not recognize these informal settlements. They say unauthorized slum hai. I went to Ludhiana and the commissioner said, वहाँ तो बिहारी रहते हैं, वो क्या slum है? वो हमारे लोग नहीं रहते, वो बिहारी रहते, as if they have come from the moon. And this is basic attitude, is not to care for the migrant, not to care for the people. And this whole idea of recognizing informal trade, informal services, informal manufacturing, we'll have to do it first, recognize them, and then give them options to survive in this very competitive world. So this whole issue, we need to recognize that rental housing is an important means of getting some basic place for the poor, and also income for the middle income group. Not income, even lower middle group people, they give a room to rent. Not because they want to make money, they really need that income. So from both sides, rental housing has to be studied, understood, and supported as a part of it. Unfortunately, we have a rental housing policy, draft rental housing policy, but I don't know how much it considers this poor rental housing issues. We'll have to mainstream resilience in the master plan. It could be earthquake, the disaster at moment is public health. It could be earthquake, it could be floods, it could be fire, it could be climate change. All that should become a part of the master plan. And this whole issue of high density, we all talk of compact city, high density, high rise, mixed land use, connected to public transport. I think we need a review. I don't have ready-made answers. Some people have said that wherever there is high density, we have more cases of COVID-19. I'm not saying yes and no kind of thing. I think a lot of things are gray here. We'll have to look at it. And my final thing, we need to realize that India urban is so large and it is so diverse that one size fit all doesn't work for this country. We'll have to work for different state and different cities. My very favorite example in Baroda and Rajkot, those two cities are only 4 hours away. Rajkot is basically a small manufacturing city where people work with hand. They sleep in the afternoon and work till late, 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock. They eat and they go out for the nightlife. In Baroda, we go to sleep after watching TV at 8:39. We go to sleep. Even two cities so close, there's different culture. So we must realize that each city is different. We need to look at the local culture and then to plan. And all that requires compensate, benevolent. We need to have a this real estate commercial approach will not work if you really want to handle this issue. Thank you so much. Sujit, you could take over.
Yeah, Srinivas, sir, now you can share your open remarks. No, sir, you have to unmute yourself. Yeah. No.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Go ahead. So it's again muted.
No, I'm always unmuting. Now you can hear me?
Yeah.
Now you can hear me?
Going again back to mute.
I think you can hear me now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I've unmuted. Thanks a lot, Sujit, and your team of Asian Cities Network. And namaskar, Chetan sir, and namaskar, Dr. Antrin. And you have asked about the most vulnerable section of the society. And from my day-to-day experience, now I have started going to my office, which are almost 40 kilometers from my residence. And all of a sudden, I passed through expressway, and all of a sudden, I saw a large number of migrants. They are going by walk. I don't know. They were not aware of the buses arranged by the state government. But when I asked them, they were saying that most of them were daily wagers, and they were construction workers. So what I feel that they are highly vulnerable. But beside that, again, when I visit our IP estate, have you seen the intersection of ITO, Sujit?
Yes.
So you can see large
Yes,
number
sir.
of beggars are there. Large number of beggars, and in fact, shelterless people, they keep on roaming there. Now they are having serious problem. So they are not getting food properly because most of the shops are, closed, and there's absolutely no scope for getting the food. But I don't know, maybe the district administration, I think the central district administration, I think they are facilitating the, free food. So from my point of view, in fact, from day-to-day experience, these are the most vulnerable section of the society. And in fact, the transgenders also, the transgenders also, they are also most vulnerable because they are absolutely out of, they are not getting any, whatever means they are earning. So they are not able to. So actually, I was going through the definition of, vulnerability. the WHO has given a definition which says that degree to which a population, individual, or organization is unable to anticipate, cope with, resist, and recover from the impacts of disaster. Now, this pandemic is absolutely totally new for us. We were caught unawares, till I think the first week of March, we were not aware that what sort of precautions we need to take. So once through all video, media, we were getting all the news that what sort of protocols you have to adhere to and what sort of precautions you have to take. In fact, now WHO also should seriously consider to change this definition, because I think out of 205 countries, around 185 countries have actually been affected by this pandemic. So now another thing is that just I want to highlight, because I am always obsessed with the data collection. In fact, in my previous presentation also I have mentioned regarding the percentage of main workers engaged in informal or unorganized sector is around 83%. 83% of the workforce work in unorganized sector, and it has been estimated about 14 crore in the entire India. I don't have a disaggregated data. The entire India, we have 14 crore migrant laborers. Now, there is no official estimate that how many migrants have actually gone to their native places. It's very difficult to estimate. In fact, I don't know if railways are arranging. They can get the details of migrants who have actually gone to their native place. But through newspaper, they have mentioned that around 5 crore people, they have actually returned to their respective native place. But I am not sure to what extent the figures are hello. Hello, sorry, there was some interruption. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Can you hear me now? Sorry, I don't know. There was some.
Yes,
now,
sir.
just in 1 minute, I would like to, highlight what could be the impact. That is the most important, and for planners also, we'll have to really work that how we are going to recover after the pandemic. Hopefully by June, July, our graph gets flattened. But the biggest challenge will be how the migrants are going to come back to their workplace. Now, it's no guarantee that they are going to get wherever they were working. Will the employer is going to welcome them, or is he employer is going to provide some sort of financial security? Is he going to pay for the entire 2 to 3 months which they are going to miss the work? And of course, due to lockdown, there has been no work. And again, I don't know to what extent the financial insecurity will be there amongst the migrants. And then maybe definitely they must have lended some money. They must have been running under some debts. How they are going to overcome those debts? Then delay in getting the assistance from the state government. Now we are getting news from media that a lot of cab drivers, they are getting financial assistance. They are going to get some amount like 5,000 rupees. They are going to get amount. Similarly, government of Uttar Pradesh also, they have also transferred around 611 crore to the beneficiaries. Now, definitely there must be some criteria for transferring the money. Either they must be having Aadhaar ID or some sort of registration they must have done. But what about those migrants who don't have any registration? Those who are daily wagers, how we are going to ensure financial security? That will be a biggest problem. So now, post-pandemic recovery, I think I will respond when you start asking questions, because you have already framed the questions. So then after Dr. Antadin, remarks, so we can one by one, we can take up the question and we can deliberate in detail. from urban planning point of view, what steps we are supposed to take.
Yeah, Anthony, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sujit, and greetings to Professor Chetan Vaidya and Mr. Srinivas. And with Professor Chetan Vaidya, we have quite frequent chats anyway on his experience. So incidentally, both Professor Chetan Vaidya and we are migrants who have gotten locked down in states which are not their own. So he is in Kerala and I am in Orissa. And incidentally, we are both in places which are safer than our native states. So I from West Bengal and he from Gujarat. So, so in a way, we are, let's say, migrant labor also, though of a much more, as you can see from Professor Chetan Vaidya's room, it's definitely not a home, it's a hotel room. Mine is a home. So just in the general opening remark, because we will go into specifics of Orissa, and in a way, I am glad that I could not, due to the quickness of the speed with which Prime Minister Modi declares things. I never got time to, buy a flight ticket and go back to Calcutta, but I'm actually glad for that. So I thank him for the unintended consequence. To put it very simply, I feel the COVID is a tremendous litmus test. It has come out of nowhere, attacked us in a scale which is perhaps unprecedented since the Second World War in terms of, how widespread it is and what is the command with which it can tell the whole world, stay at home, and the world better stay at home. And there is no clear weapon that we have, so much smarter than earlier crises in that sense. And when I think of cities and what we do, it's very much like COVID reveals who we are at the base level. In sports or in different things, often they say that your level of general training is revealed when a sudden crisis hits you, when on the day of competition, it's not that the crisis makes you perform better, but you fall down at the level of your lowest base average level of performance, which means as you have been on a day-to-day basis, that's what will get revealed. There is no way of cheating it. There is no way of pretending that a VIP is visiting my city next week and I quickly, prepare things and make things in order. There was a novel written by Oscar Wilde in the 19th century, and I'm quoting this time for a particular reason. And those of you who have read that novel, it's about an extremely handsome man whom everybody loved for his beauty. Little did they know that he had sold his soul so that a painting lying locked away in his room used to turn old and ugly and decrepit while he retained his beauty, So it's almost like our smart cities when they show the manicured makeup face, when our cities have sold their souls and hidden away in some attic room, millions of migrants are, and the novel ends with Dorian Gray in a last-ditch attempt to save his beauty, stabs his own painting. And when people discover, they see that there is a painting of a wonderful, handsome man, whereas an old man is lying dying with a knife in his hand, So perhaps some things that will happen in the future, who knows? Late 19th century is also the time when many early ecologists and Karl Marx himself talked of something known as the metabolic rift. I will get to this later on, but when we say that things are hitting us out of nowhere, it is not entirely true. COVID is hitting us out of nowhere, yes. In the same way as next year, something else will hit us out of nowhere. Today is the 6th of May. Last year, 3rd May, I was sitting here at the same spot while the cyclone Fani was raging all around me. And again, I was stuck in Bhubaneswar. I happen to have always remained stuck in these moments. So last year, it was all talk about cyclone, what Orissa did well, what Orissa did not. Now it's all talk about COVID, And since the last century, these kind of analysis like metabolic rift, which often we don't discuss in academic circles, have been talking about how human drive for profit creates a permanent disjuncture between nature and production processes, the results of which you will not see at that moment, but results of that through climate change, through erratic climatic behavior, it's almost reached a process that who is the culprit here? Is China the culprit? We don't really know. Is some other? But whatever the case, I will end by this opening thing by saying, and then we'll take it further in detailed questions, that every country's soul stands revealed. The countries and states in India also, and the countries who already had a tremendous prioritization in terms of welfare, in terms of equitable development, in terms of pro-poor development, those who had internalized it. Globally, if you see the Scandinavian countries, if you see Germany, if you remember during the Syrian crisis, Germany was chastised for having taken in the largest number of migrants, So, but these countries, and if you see in India, Kerala, to a substantial degree also Orissa, welfare models of very different characteristics, I would say. But these states, which have always had welfare on their agenda, have somehow done better. Similarly, the countries, on the other hand, we have USA completely going nuts, as to what is happening. So it reveals a lot about who we are. And if we investigate that very deeply, perhaps that is the way not only to counter this, but also to counter structurally all these that are going to happen, because they're going to happen. We will be hit left and right. The next one will not be COVID, of that we can be sure, So then let's go into the specific questions, and we can deal with it then.
Thank you so much, actually. And you have all of you have touched many of the points that we will be discussing today. But first, I will start with the first of questions, which will focus on urban poor and planning in relations. So the first question to all of you is, as I've said earlier, that World Bank predicted that there will be 100 million so-called new poor, which will be adding into the cities worldwide. So what's your opinion on this? I mean, it's open to all. Anyone can answer first. So who will be going first?
Yes, Srinivas, you start, then I'll follow you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, sir.
Sujit, can you repeat the first question, please?
The question is, I've already talked about that World Bank predicted that there will be like 100 million so-called new poor, which are the migrants or the wage laborers or all the people which lost their jobs, particularly during this pandemic. So worldwide, and in cities, these will be the new poor. So what's your point on that, and how we can, how we should tackle as a first point?
See, first we'll have to really assess that how many migrants have actually, lost their livelihood. That is very much important. And in fact, we have got vast hinterland, and focus should be on MSMEs and also food processing industries. In fact, we have been discussing that we have totally, forgotten the regional plan, concept. Except for NCR and few metropolitan region plans, we have not given much emphasis on, regional plan. And in fact, we had also requested, Chandigarh UT administration and even Puducherry UT administration to go for interstate regional plan, but we were not successful. In fact, I had given all the, I had prepared the terms of references, but somehow you'll have to really focus on the rich hinterland and how you can actually absorb the, the migrants into new employment. And in fact, through food processing industry, there is a tremendous scope for, absorbing large number of, migrants. Now, next point would be, ministry also, they have been, sending the advisories to the state government that you should ensure that no person should lose his employment. But I'm not sure to what extent the state governments are actually, implementing about this. Whether they are ensuring, because most of the construction laborers are highly, they don't have any insurance, they don't have any, regular wages. They work mostly on day-to-day basis. So the first step will be how we are going to ensure security for the construction laborers. That will be very much important. In fact, Chetan sir, we also had discussion with NAREDCO. In fact, NAREDCO had sent a huge list of, their grievances. But unfortunately, they have not highlighted the problems for the construction labor. In fact, how you are going to ensure security for them? Absolutely, they want that all the the NOC's validity, the building plan approval validity, the occupancy and completion certificate validity should be extended. I mean, they want extension for 1 year, but they have absolutely not emphasized on this thing regarding the and now today what most of the real estate developers what they are saying, so they are all real estate projects are going to get affected. So either they should have retained these laborers, they should have provided transit accommodation, they should have provided free food for them, but that is not the reality, because I live in NCR and I observe daily the construction activities. And the construction activities simply they have come to the standstill, and now they will get further delayed. So I think these are the few points we'll have to really focus on the security of the migrants once they come back.
Okay.
Hello.
Yes, Srinivas, have you finished?
Sir, I was very happy. Just I got the message. You are mentioning about the Rajkot.
Yes.
So I was so
Rajkot.
happy because today ministry released first installment for lab TPS to Rajkot and New Kolkata. So I just got message because we from home only we were processing all the cases and recommending to the ministry, and ultimately we got the approval of secretary. So perhaps by taking this decentralized planning exercise through lab TPS, so I think I will add further once we get more questions. I'll further add.
Okay. I think I'll pick up from where Srinivas left. This whole one is we will have to obviously work at two levels. One is how do we start looking at regional planning? And again, fortunately, I am in a state where local bodies are highly empowered. Our mayors is the executive powers. Our local bodies are not run by municipal commissioner. They are managed by the mayors. And actually, I meet the mayor more often in Kochi than the commissioner. The commissioner is called secretary. I meet her very little, but all the time I have meetings with the mayor. So how do you sort of empower the local bodies, not only local bodies, to also district administration, where they get into this whole concept of regional planning? And so the 74th Constitutional Amendment and the Town Planning Act have to get integrated together. I think that should be first step together. It's not only for poor, but cities as a whole. I think that should be a focus. And second thing is, we'll have to work at local area plans. Srinivas, he can elaborate it further on town planning schemes or local area plan as we call them now in the new terminology. But I think another part has to be ward level development, area level development, and not only have local area plans in our master plan. So you go from local area plan, master plan, and you come down from regional plan and go up from local area plans to develop the city plan and the urban plan. But together I think there are issues which we now need to consider. I already emphasized the role of rental housing for the poor. This whole issue of density versus crowding. I think we are getting confused between density and crowding. I just heard there's a paper by Darshini and Indra Harve based on Ahmedabad data where they have said wherever there are densities, how COVID-19 cases are high, which I'll have to get into that paper in more detail. But I think rather than using the word high density and the COVID, I think it is the crowding. And how do you define crowding is an issue as planners we really need to look at. So we don't want crowding, but there's no harm in going for what is called as high density mixed land use connected to public transport. Now, public transport could be anything. It could be buses, it could be metro, or it could be rail system. All three for me is, or BRTs, all four are same for me. And then you have higher densities near the transit zones, and then you go away. The density are low, but do focus on last minute connectivity. Within that, as I mentioned earlier, we need to recognize informal sector. We need to recognize a lot of, Srinivasan used the word 85%, but I'm definitely sure average is 70-75% is informal sector. And they are in manufacturing, services, trade. We have a vendor policy, but when the master plan is developed, we remember that there is this. And all these things need to get integrated together. I think participation and participation of the people, citizens, and integration of these different departments. We basically are talking of 7 plans. Somebody is doing sanitation plan, somebody is doing housing plan, somebody is working on land use plan. How do you integrate together? And now, fortunately, this GIS master plan, which TCPU and Ministry is promoting, provides that opportunity for us to connect together. And that is my sort of medium-term perspective to look at urban poor and town poor. Thank you, Sujit. You can take over.
Okay. And
Yeah. So regarding this question, this 100 million figure, of course, is like it's a global figure, isn't it? I mean, it's
It's a global figure.
Yeah.
Global figure.
I mean, in any case, I mean, what we know for sure is that definitely this will not only increase existing vulnerabilities, which are already extreme, and then further it will push, people into destitution. And this will not just be, I mean, right now it is already vulnerable informal sector. Very soon it would also be sections of the middle class, lower middle class. As the economy will slow down, layoffs have already started, and it is not just in India. I mean, it will take very, very diverse forms. It will take one form of letting some people go because they can't be paid. And it also will be other things, like there are very strong YouTube clips now coming out from Bangalore of construction laborers of the URC company who are saying that on the one hand, they quarantine us. On the other hand, they are dumping us in bus like cattle and taking us to work. Because so the argument would be that quarantining you is for public safety, and huddling you to work is for economic safety. And both together would be nationalism, of course, your patriotism. So all these strange kind of things would happen, of course. But the bottom line is that governments which have been rationally connected with the poor, I will not say out of a grand charity or, there is no charity at very large scales when you're talking of these kind of scales. So Kerala has had, I will not talk of Kerala since Professor Vedya will already deal upon it. Orissa, for example, had started this with respect to disaster and the PDS, public distribution system. And you have fantastic articles of John Dress in his recent Jolapala economic book. And Orissa's thing was very simple, which also shows, I mean, at this time, we should think in terms of what are core principles, not exactly what the states are doing, because we can't have one size fits all, but what principles can we derive out of it? One principle is that when you are in a dangerous, difficult situation, do that which you are really good at, If you are only good at launching the police and telling people, nobody will go out, then at that moment, that's all you can do. But if you have been developing a system where, now imagine if you will tell the Delhi police today that act in a very rational, compassionate, benevolent way with the poor, it's not something they will be able to internalize very quickly. So that's why they are doing all sorts of feudalistic kind of behavior, almost making people do squats, and trying their level best to do what they can to enforce. But again, when we see what does, for example, Orissa do? Orissa knows that it is not one of the top economic performers. Orissa realizes that it does not begin with a tremendously high developed capacity. It does not have the political sea of struggle, let's say, in Kerala, where democratic governance and the trade union movements, workers' movements, democratic decentralization has been not just today. It has been on ever since independence came. EMS Nambudri was at it since the 50s. 40s. So they take what they are good at and they basically apply that. So what they do is basic, simple, based on the principle that given my limitations, if my priority is the poor, then what do I do? What can I do and what do I do? This has also been the approach of one of the nodal agencies of the state, the Housing and Urban Development Department. And the principal secretary of that, Mr. Mathivatnan, I've had the honor of working very closely with him since 2017, pretty much from the first days of the Orissa Land Rights to Slum Dwellers, mission, which I will see what is the direct relevance of that today. So think about it, that they have started this Land Rights to Slum Dwellers mission in 2017. So by today, and they were unique in the sense that they said that we will not focus on slum dwellers just in the 5 corporations, because they have been covered earlier under Amrut, they have been covered under Rajiv Awas Yojana, JNNURM, different schemes. But what about the small and medium towns? So Orissa has 5 municipal corporations, 109 municipalities and notified area councils. We targeted slums only in the municipalities and notified area councils. So the result was that by 2018-19 already, we had a detailed spatial high-resolution imagery and detailed household surveys of each and every slum dweller. So Orissa can say that starting from a very low benchmark and having the humility to say that, this is who I am, I want to do something, they can now boast that they are perhaps the only regional government in the world that has a full spatial database, household database of each and every slum dweller, in the state, each and every slum. And that gives them an enormous ability to understand, play around when any kind of crisis hits. They can go, they have the web, they have the grid in place. Similarly, they had schemes like the Basudha scheme or the Unnati schemes. Basudha scheme was about universal drinking water coverage and the last mile connectivity. And while they have not used, they have used the municipalities, but they channelize the municipality from the top. So it is not traditional participation from below, but it is very much a model of responsiveness from above, which guides also the levels below and kind of creates, if not a very, let's say, vibrant, discursive, participatory system, at least a very responsive system, which responds to the real needs of the people, using the machinery from top to bottom. And when you have something like this, now imagine that you said that I will give land rights to about 200,000 families of slum dwellers across the state. Then I will undertake slum upgrading in those, because that's a natural progression. When you have land rights, then you would like to do upgrading. Now imagine the advantage. I will not say advantage because there are enormous difficulties, but right now, when the critical thing is to give jobs to the informal sector, a lot of them are in the construction, a lot of them, Orissa is also plumbers, they're great plumbers.
Yes, yes.
So, the Oriya plumbers, the Kendrapara plumbers and construction workers, masons, they're fantastic craftspeople. They're great wall painters. A lot of the smart city things in Orissa, this wall painting thing, they're artistically oriented craftsmen. What they have done is, and I will give you in the next question, I will give you the further details of that. But now you have 2,000 slums where you can initiate slum upgrading processes, which means you need labor power, which means you need, and your groundwork for that is already done. You know who lives there. You know how big those slums are. You know your municipalities, even in an obscure notified area council way out in somewhere like Nuapara, border districts. Malkangir, the so erstwhile Maoist-dominated areas. Even there, the municipalities have been mobilized to give land rights, to engage with slum dwellers, to form slum dwellers associations in all the slums. So now they say, great. So now let us start the upgrading process right away. Before monsoon hits, let's do some monsoon prevention civil work, and also do the. So bottom line is that if you have been interacting with poor for a very long time, you would be better prepared. On the other hand, if you had been doing lots of other things, like where I will make a temple or how much civil work, I mean, yes, you can put construction workers to make a temple, perhaps, but this is not the way. You would be distracted, you would be caught unaware, you know. So, in an ask. So that's it. Then so that's my response, that the numbers of poor are not so important if you know who you are and that you're going to do something. Numbers of anything are a problem when you want to extract something for them, but you don't want to engage with them to listen to their needs. You know, that is the thing. Then we can take it.
Yeah, sure. I think that you have said that data is the most important thing that needs in the current situation, because if we had the data even in the India wide or even in the state wide, then we could have been prepared and we would have been like better for the next crisis or any crisis that we will be tackling with. Okay, so I think we are a bit behind the time and we will skip some questions that we have been answered in some other way. I want to ask this question to Chetan sir, where you're in Kerala. So if we see a bit back in past 3 months, Kerala was the first state that got case identified in the entire country, and as slowly it hit very hard. Like Kerala was in highest in numbers, but if we see in today's situation, everyone is talking that Kerala is a successful case model and they have flattened the curve to the extent possible. So how did they break the chain? How exactly they did the process, and how did they manage these vulnerable sections in Kerala? Can you elaborate on that?
I think you are right. We got in Kerala somewhere on 31st of January, the first case, which was a Wuhan student. And then I think there are 2 more cases. So we got, but Kerala had Ebola and Nipah crisis only last 2 years ago. And they also had floods in 2018 and 2019. So Kerala has a history, like Orissa has a history of treating of this kind of disaster. Kerala had experience of managing Nipah and Ebola. And during that period, they take several steps, including setting up a testing laboratory, first in one place in Kerala, and then in 14 districts of Kerala, where they could test the virus. They also set up a task force at the state level, right in the beginning, chaired by the minister who is a teacher and who has a prior experience of dealing with these 2 viruses earlier. So you had a complete reaction at the national level, so at the state level. And then at the local level, as I said, our local bodies are empowered, even when it is the responsibility of the revenue department. If there are floods, theoretically, department is the responsibility of the revenue department in this kind of disaster. But in Kerala, the local bodies are the first to go to help the people. From wherever they get funds, they get managed their own fund. Of course, their funding is also very large, because I said, 30% of the total budget of Kerala state goes through local governments. And they have something called People's Campaign. They actually implemented 74th constitutional in spirit and in practice. Both function and functionaries and finances have been given to local bodies. And that is why they have funds. So people are sort of involved right in the beginning. We have 2 lakh volunteers in Kerala who have come to help the government. I mean, nowhere else you will see such a large number of people who sort of on their own, they have asked for voluntary help and they have come along. At least there are 10 volunteers each ward. And of course, the villages in Kerala are much larger. It's one ULB, sorry, one panchayat will be about 20,000, 25, 26, 40,000 people, 25, 26,000 people. So there are wards in each of these, and they are very strong with it. So the local body, empowered local body, and empowered Kudamshri, that is women's group, together have become a participant. So very strong participation has taken place. The local bodies are empowered, and then they had the prior experience. They didn't say that, I would like to mention, unfortunately, I'm from Gujarat. Gujarat, the principal secretary health kept telling until the last moment that we don't have cases, we don't have cases. You are Gujaratis all over the world. They are going to bring the virus. The virus is not going to come from low-income areas of Ahmedabad. They came from all over the world, and that is what happened later on. But Kerala prepared for it. People made fun of Keralites. We're overconscious. But they became conscious, right? They started examining airport people coming from those countries even before the nation decided to do it. So Kerala, in Cochin, you will get the temperature fellow right in the beginning. I mean, sometime in February also, we started these procedures. We could have been more strict. Some of the districts which are closer to Karnataka got more cases than other places. But I think it is handled very well. Also, physically, Kerala doesn't have very high density areas, very few high density. There's no village and town concept in Kerala. It's a very well distributed thing. And there are lessons. Also, one more thing I should tell you. Traditionally, as you know, education and health have been important. It was mentioned by Anil earlier. But I think we should also realize last 20 years, Kerala has been spending a lot of money in education and health. We are the best health facilities in the public sector. And I think that is what has come, right? People who came in the front is not the private sector hospital. It is the public sector hospitals, public sector clinics, which are and these clinics are managed by our local bodies. Again, the sub-centers are managed by local bodies at the municipal level and at the village level, and district hospitals are managed by the district administration. They are not handled by the state government the way it is happening in health department, separately handled. It has tensions. In the beginning, there were a lot of tensions. Now those tensions are doctors have realized we have to work with the local leaders, and local leaders also realize, but their salaries are paid directly by the state. It's not in terms of money, it's not an additional burden on so they have evolved a model over a period of time. There are problems. Often the mayor and the president of the local body, chairman they are called, they tell me that we have a thing called local government engineers. There's a whole cadre of local government engineers who are managed by the local government LSG department, local self-government department. That has not got integrated properly with the municipal corporation. There are problems. There are not that everything is pakka here, but things. So this is a kind of thing where you bring in public participation. You have a system of Kudamshri. You have empowered local bodies, and then you give them money and functionaries that are together. And prior experience, they became conscious much earlier than even the national government. I'll stop at that.
You have said very nicely that strong governance and empowering people, and at the same time the past crisis that actually helped Kerala improving, I think, the current how they are right now. So we will move to again Anthony sir. I will ask this question to you, where you have said that I mean, what are those strategies we need to plan for the future dealing the migrants? And I'm talking. You have while we are talking, you mentioned that there is a initiative called Urban Wage Employment Initiative in Odisha, and this is helping these urban poor in multiple ways. So can you elaborate on that and say how that initiative has been happening and other things? Yeah.
Yeah, so UW, this Urban Wage Employment Initiative, This came out about 2 weeks back from the office of the Principal Secretary in Housing and Urban Development. And since then, very quickly, it was shared also by MOHUA. There was a circular, and they said that, the attachment of the Orissa thing is there, and other states can also try. So what they did was, and I was expecting the Principal Secretary, Mr. Mathivanan, to, because he's not the kind of person who remains quiet in the face of, any kind of situation very quietly. He was kind of quiet for about 2 weeks, which was remarkable, in March. And then now we know that that's the time when he was perhaps, formulating this with his other members. And so what he did was, as you know, I told you about this Orissa Land Rights to Slum Dwellers initiative. And they have scores of other initiatives. So there, a couple of things that Orissa does is it goes by universalization, It does not, the classic oldest case, if you see any intervention of Orissa, you will see that there is a core standard principle they always follow. And that you can call perhaps the essence of the Orissa development model. It has now become almost automatic. Take the public distribution system, food public distribution system. If there are 10% people in a certain district who are, let's say, not eligible, slightly above the below poverty line, they would say that give it to them nonetheless, because the effort needed to exclude them, because they will also be the influential people in the village, because they are the stronger ones. The barriers they will put will impose more costs on the system than that, and even the poor will lose out. And the economic validity of this has been shown because the PDS works fine there, and then in Chhattisgarh and all these people where it improved. Jean Dresse personally vouched in his article that economically it has been sound. Take something very disconnected, the recent public bus system that came up in Bhubaneswar. And the Principal Secretary once said in one line that the reason our Bhubaneswar public bus system works so nicely is because it is based on a gross cost model, not on a net cost model. Again, back to the same thing. You are not passing the onus of recovering money from the passengers on the you are not putting the private sector in a lifelong battle with the community. You are telling the private sector that this is a good enough deal, take this money, and I will absorb the costs. And that cost, then they will try to circulate from their CSR funding, from the government funding. They will intelligently combine finances, take some from Amrut, some. Their Ahar urban feeding program, which is about 110 centers. They give about 100,000 plates per day, spread across the state from 11 o'clock to 3, and now it is also nighttime. A 20 rupee food plate at 5 rupee cost, 15 rupees subsidized by. So they have had a series of processes, directly or indirectly, all of which have helped the urban poor, all of which have been universal, and the state has always remained as an extremely, proactive. The state has never said that I am out. It has never used the excuse of delegation to wash its hands off. It is very counter neoliberal or anti-neoliberal in that sense. It engages all the time with the private sector, but it stands as a proactive background. Is it without flaws? And of course not. There are many weaknesses. So that is the same thing that they are applying here also. They take the same thing. The most important thing, Sujit, is not that they have the data. A lot of data exists in India. I mean, lots and lots of data exist. Since the time of Ray, we have detailed databases of each and every slum in almost most major cities of India. The problem with data in our case is that the data is created very quickly, very rigorously for a particular scheme, largely GIS data. When that scheme ends and another scheme begins, they do not build up on that previous data. They again do a whole kind of, survey. So they will again create a database. So those are the problems. But if you scan around in different departments, based on the Orissa thing, recently we had discussions with TCP also that can be used Orissa-like, technology of drones and things to make plans for small and medium towns. So the stress that they did, as I said before also, Their slum program first targeted small and medium towns. Within the small and medium towns, they focused on the slum. They did not stop it at the level of a policy because they knew then it would remain a word. And like all regional planning and interventions, it would be after a while, why not implement it? Why not implement it? They translated it into concrete, measurable activities that will be done. How many households got water supply? How many households got mapped? How many households are eligible for land rights? Where exactly are the slums? So what this does is, this makes the agents of the state see exactly where their people are, how they live. So urban local bodies do not visit slums just because they're urban local bodies. They have to run around in the slum because a circular came that go to the slum and take this team with you and initiate this scheme, do a door-to-door survey. Then, they will get. So because we have now different levels, now think what's happening now. Just recently, the principal secretary told me that he was on a very rigorous field work because now Orissa is facing a problem. About 5 lakh migrants registered to come back in the first 2 days when they opened that portal. This is just the new Friday, Saturday, let's say. So he was there in Ganjam, where Ganjam is also the CM's district, and that's where all the migrants from Surat, a lot of Oriya migrants in Surat textile mills. So from Professor Chetan Vaidya's state, they have taken this train and they've come back. And so now they are swamped because they are like, they expected, total 5 lakhs would come over a couple of days. But now it's like 5 lakhs came in the first lot. So they are struggling. But at the same time, they have the work orders. Now, what they are doing with this new urban wage thing is, they will not go for contracting. They will not do for anything. They will design. So we were helping also making simple drawings of the community centers that will come up, a simple structure. But let's say you can make as many community centers as you want because you have so many slums in which to make them. And then depending on where the migrants will come, let's say they are coming to Ganjam, then we will activate the things in the municipalities, notified area councils around Ganjam. And as the workers will start spreading to their home cities, they will find work there. That is the thing. We will see how much it actually works, but the model works. The model is not just for some works that has been done in Bhubaneswar or just in Rourkela, because the urban missions are activated equally in 114 urban local bodies. They can be, switched on and off depending on where they are feeling the pressure. So if Ganjam is where most of the migrants are making their arrival, then they will activate those things mostly for Ganjam, and then it can be spread around. So it is universal, and therefore you can play around with it. And while you do it, you will alleviate pressure on the major cities, of course. So if you take this mission Jaga, this land rights mission, 5 years, 10 years forward, you have already managed to make urban officials and planners focus on the small and medium towns, which nobody even perhaps paid any attention to earlier. So now something or the other will keep happening, and they may start acting as counterpoints to or countermagnets to the larger cities. So the old idea of integrated small and medium town development, this and that, there's a lot of learning. Of course, already I'm speaking a lot of time, but as you continue your processes, I can give you a lot of information, a lot of data on how they are doing it, which also shows a way as to how the idea of integrated small and medium town or these, inclusive development, how do you operationalize them? It's very easy to talk of the idea. The idea is utopian and then get frustrated, nothing happens. But how do you actually do them? What does it require? It does require a lot. First and foremost, and I will end here, it requires a die-hard commitment. You are basically, you have to believe in that idea, and then you operationalize it. So that's it, some of the points, and then again details, further details after, if you want.
Yeah, thank you. So this question is the next question. We will be going to our second set of questions, where we will be focusing on urban missions and guidelines, like what will be the post-COVID situation for those. So the first question is to Srinivas sir. as a planner, we all know there are certain guidelines and rules and norms. And the first guideline that comes to our mind always is the URDP5. And now we also have the RRDP5 and others guidelines as well. But yet, in the entire report of the URDP5, there are only 6 mentions of public health, to be specifically, if I say. So what's your comment on that? And post this situation, how we need to incorporate these learnings from the COVID situation and add those things? Over to you, sir.
You can hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Hello, you have mentioned that in this question, there are only 6 mention of public health. I think these are all specific, but what I, sir, there are, I think, 61 mention of public health. But of course, the section 8.4.3 mentions about the healthcare facilities, and it also gives about the hierarchy of the health facilities. Now, what is missing in URDFI guidelines? I think this is for all the students. In fact, we have never, we have done the, service level benchmark for the physical infrastructure. But at the same time, for, social facilities like health education, we have not set any benchmark. Now, we get the figures now, that is, I think from ICMR or Ministry of Health, like we get figures for hospital per 1,000 population, beds per 1,000 population, now doctors per 1,000 population, and ICU facilities, like number of, for 1 lakh population, how many, ICU facilities, like ventilators, how many ventilators are available. So this will have to factor in once we go for revision of URDP guidelines, or in fact, for your kind information, Indo-European Union Urban Forum. I think Chetan sir must be aware of that Indo-European Union Urban Forum. They have, written to Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs that they would like to prepare guidelines for pandemic resilient metropolitan cities. In fact, it should be pandemic resilient cities. So the terms of reference were forwarded to me, and I had suggested few more things. We need to seriously look into URDFI guidelines as well as model building bylaws. Now, we'll have to relook at this. Should we, should we integrate the service level benchmark? I mean, especially for social services, that we'll have to really seriously think for. And again, beside health facilities, I will say that URDFI guidelines or modern building bylaws, they are not silent on informal sector. Of course, Professor Chetan Vedia rightly stated that most of the master plans, they don't emphasize on informal sector. But in URDFI guidelines, you can go through that. Inclusive land development is there, inclusion of poor into formal and housing market, and in fact, how to ensure increased supply of land for urban poor. And again, this will be very, very challenging. And you, sir, also mentioned about the rental housing, but I am not very confident, because the rental housing, I think the concept was first introduced in Maharashtra, and that was not much successful. And in fact, in Mumbai, Thane, or the surrounding areas, how many migrants they live. Of course, I'll be sharing the details. If we go for pandemic resilient city guidelines, I will be definitely sharing. Again, for the information of all students and all youngsters who are working in the mission, sir, Chetan sir, Ministry has already given the extension for Amrit mission and local area plan and town planning scheme for 1 year, sir. They have already given. So those who are working in mission, they should not get worried that they may lose jobs. And perhaps it will also be, if it is extended for 1 year. So I think those who are passing out this year, they will be likely to get jobs in these. Now,
The sound is gone, no? Sujit?
Srinivas, we cannot hear you.
Yeah. I was mentioning about this
Now we
integrated
can
development
hear
of small and medium towns.
Okay. Yes, please.
And that scheme almost it continued for almost 20 years, from 7 5-year plan to 12 5-year plan. In fact, the very first IDSMT guidelines were framed in SP only, under the guidance of Professor Bijit Ghosh and CS Chandrasekhara.
Yeah.
Now we have Smart City Mission, we have Amrit Mission, but we don't have any mission for cities less than 1 lakh population. There is no mission for small and medium town. In fact, we had prepared draft cabinet note also for Amrit Plus. Amrit Plus was essentially for cities less than 1 lakh population. Hopefully, decision will be taken at the cabinet level to have another mission for small and medium towns. I think that was also, the draft cabinet note had envisaged around 1 lakh crore rupees. The central share 1 lakh crore rupees and the matching share of state government another 1 lakh crore rupees. So hopefully after this pandemic, the things when it get normal, we may have a new mission, but we don't know what will be the decision of cabinet. Now, what else you would like to ask further? Sujit?
One question. Sujit, can I ask one question?
Yeah, yes.
Sujit,
Yes,
can
sir.
I
Yes,
ask
sir.
not question, but information. Can you update us on the capacity building, either mission? You had mentioned to it in our India International Center workshop.
Yes, sir.
What is
But
the
now,
the students will be very keen to know. No, NOSPlan
yeah,
is
sir.
Can you elaborate that here?
Yes, sir. So now we have an integrated capacity, program for urban development. This is known as ICBUD, sir. Integrated Capacity Building in Urban Development. Now, all the mission, the 5% which they have earmarked for the capacity building, it is pulled together. And then based on the demand or the requirements from the state government, ministry will start funding capacity building program. And for your kind information, sir, under the IEC-BUD, we had conducted 5 capacity building program for lab TPS for all the state town planners who were involved in who were involved in preparation of local area plan and town planning scheme. And we trained around 200 town planners in 5 capacity building program, and it was in collaboration with the SEPT University and Professor Shashwat Bandyopadhyay. He had coordinated this capacity building program. Of course, now once we have pandemic resilient guidelines, now we'll have to sensitize each and every state government that you should, in fact, master plan should also include a chapter on pandemic resilient city. Like as per the advice of Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs as well as National Disaster Management Agency or National Disaster Management Authority, most of the now cities now really they are understanding the importance of disaster management. So I think we'll have to also look for pandemic resilient cities. And let me also, with regard to model building bylaws, it also it has given norms and standards for health facilities. Perhaps now we have to really think, rather we'll have to advise the state government that all, the hospitals, the super specialty hospitals, the government hospitals must have a dedicated space for isolation ward. The isolation ward is not at all mentioned in any of the guidelines, and this is a learning for us. And if the hospitals they go for isolation ward, I think we should also keep free from the FAR. I think that we will, sir. This is very much required, and hopefully we will be sending advisory to all the state government requesting that all the urban local bodies and urban development authorities should issue completion cum occupancy certificate provided the hospital, I am talking about the hospital, provided they have earmarked space for the isolation ward. So this is very much important from planning norms and standards that we'll have to keep on emphasizing. Yes, Sujit, in addition to this question, Actually, I wanted to focus on lab. Can you allow me 2 or 3 minutes on lab, local area plan and town planning scheme?
Yes, sir, you can.
Yeah, I think most of the students, especially SPA Delhi students, when they come for internship, we give this exercise for evaluating the proposal of lab TPS. Now, 25 smart cities have been identified for undertaking this lab TPS program. Now, these cities are supposed to only prepare the local area plan and town planning scheme. We are funding around 2 crore rupees for each city. Since now you are aware that a lot of smart cities, they converted their integrated command and control center into COVID war room, and of course we are getting aggregated data. But at the same time, if you are going to get disaggregated data at the ward level, there's a lot of scope to do analysis, especially for, if you want to correlate the red zone to density, the red zone to the congestion, the red zone whether all of our agricultural mandis, are they following in red zone? I mean, there are a lot of scope for I will encourage the students who will be now going to 4th year or 2nd year of their respective courses. They can take up this thesis topic. And from my city experience, I stay in Greater Noida, and Greater Noida Authority, in collaboration with NIC, they prepared one map for the city, which clearly indicates which are the hotspots. I mean, red zone, orange zone, and green zone. And they have given data up to plot level. If you click the at the plot, you can get the details of owners. Also, if you they have divided the entire city from COVID pandemic point of view. They have divided the entire city into 5 zones. And if you click at a particular zone on a particular, I mean, the zones are covering the sectors. If you click there, you will get the details of which are the grocery shops are available, where the doctor is available, and where the chemist is available. So this has become a very interactive, and hopefully other cities will also take the example of Greater Noida. I think this is also one of the reasons that due to strict enforcement in my city, it's absolutely strict enforcement that you can't go out of red zone. Of course, being a government employee and having the Ministry of Home Affairs card, I am allowed to go to my office, but my city has really contained the spread of virus. This is, I'm sharing the experience of my city. And let us see, Mr. Antrin also mentioned about the GIS based master plan. I think you had a discussion with the TCPO regarding the drone technology. And you can generate a lot of disaggregated data at the ward level with the help of drone if it is GPS enabled. I think in future we must emphasize on decentralized planning in order to really understand the problem of pandemic and understand the spread of pandemic. We should definitely go for area development strategies at the ward level. Second point, just 1 minute. Chetan sir mentioned about the experience of Kerala. Absolutely, very much impressive. I think because of the balanced distribution of urbanization. I generally in my planning technique class I had mentioned about, I had compared the urbanization between West Bengal and Kerala. Now it's a primary centric urbanization, and whereas in Kerala it's well spread. So that is also might be one of the reason. Of course, they have got highest literacy and they adhere to social distancing norms, and I think they are also taking all precautions to control the virus spread. Kerala becomes an example to other states, and hopefully other states will take all the necessary steps. Thank you. Yes, we can.
Sujit, can I add some one point? Sujit?
Yes, please, sir.
I think one of the main mission looking after the urban poor is NULM,
Yes.
National Urban Livelihood Mission. Deen Dayal National Day,
Yes.
NULM, which has number of verticals, which talks about self-employment and also wage employment and helping the street vendors and other things. But in that, there is no vertical which can take care of the migrants. Migrants are not covered by any of the verticals of the NULM. And this is one new vertical which will have to be added to our NULM, that whenever a migrant comes to a city, also get the facilities under NULM, both like PDF, temporary ration card maybe, some kind of identification, some kind of basic shelter, and access to health facility. That needs to be added to this mission. I'll stop with that.
Sir,
Now, I think you can
unfortunate,
some questions.
sir, just one point, sir.
Yeah,
Sir,
please.
you mentioned about NULM. Actually, we have never, been involved in NULM.
That's not, see,
And
NULM,
Yeah, yeah, sorry. But I think we will ask that question right now. So we have like NULM, Amrut, and Smart City. So what role did they play? I mean, these schemes played in the COVID situation to help poor and vulnerable sections. So I think that question will be answered at the same time. So I think everyone can answer this question in a brief point because we are already running a bit late. So yeah.
I think I have nothing to add except I told you about the new vertical. If Antrim knows, he could go, or you can go to question answer. I think the students will be.
Yeah, I think, sir, we should go
now
straight
you can
away
go
to
for
question.
Antrim, unless you want to add something on NULM.
Yeah, just one point regarding NULM is that much of the management of these missions at the ground level, the government missions that I was talking about, is done by self-help groups, most of which are organized through the NULM channels. That is how they integrate NULM into the, so whether it is functioning, on-ground functioning of Ahar centers or the last mile connectivity of Basudha water supply, they form self-help groups, and then self-help groups are supported through NULM. So that's how they integrate NULM into these things, which is a pretty clever way of doing it. And again, they are able to do it because they have the big picture very nicely, which I think is a hallmark of good planning. When you have the big picture and you can integrate the various schemes as and when you need them best, rather than the schemes determining and fragmenting the planning process, which I think is a big takeaway from here.
One thing I would like to add about NULM, just 1 minute, Sujit?
Yes.
Sujit?
Yes, sir, you can.
Yeah, sir, regarding NULM, in fact, ministry had organized a, workshop on national vendors policy. So they had invited me to make a presentation.
Yep.
There I had highlighted what could be the role of, town planners in delineating the vending zone. I mean, through GIS also we can do a lot of work on that. And in fact, they had invited all, the president of Vendors Association. And the Vendors Association, I mean, nobody was appreciating my fact, but the Vendors Association president, they were saying that you are doing, when you are suggesting a right thing, that town planners, that whether, he's at the district level or at the, any level, the town planner role becomes very important in identifying the vending zone in the city. And accordingly, you can allot spaces to the, the vendors who come for the weekly market. And that also, I can again share the example of my city, where actually the Greater Noida Authority, which actually prepares the master plan and also implements, they have identified areas for informal bazaar, the weekly markets. And the weekly markets, the vendors, they have to pay a little bit amount to the Resident Welfare Association. So RW also gets some sources out of that. They charge a very moderate, I think 50 rupees or 100 rupees they charge. And those, the vendors, they keep on moving to from sector to sector, but they have to put their, stalls only at the earmarked place. They can't simply just go anywhere and do their businesses. Thank you, Sujit.
Yeah, I think adding to that point, like for the vendors policy, where we have the town vending committees or the ward vending committees, if I remember the policy correct. But I think that we should add, like, they do take the taxes from these vendors in the times of crisis or in the times of certain crisis, they should enable these vendors or ensure them that, I think this should be there into the policies. And during crisis, I think this is one of the important aspects that we always need to improve it within, because in all the schemes or in all the policies, like now because of the climate change or other situations, we have to add the crisis in all the schemes and how we need to recuperate from this crisis, or if anything happens. I think that's one of addition that's from my side, I guess, that should be there.
Sujit, Bhubaneswar is the best example. Sujit, Bhubaneswar is the best example for earmarking the vendors zone. I think Antrin, I don't know whether he will be able to tell. Bhubaneswar, I think.
In that smart city area, you mean in the
I think because once we were taken to at that time Mr. Srinivas, Injeti Srinivas was principal secretary, and he has taken he had taken us along with Dr. Sudhi Krishna, the ex-secretary, to various vendors zone rather.
I don't know, I don't know particularly about it. I think you would know much better.
Okay, no problem. Okay, Sujit, we can take the question.
So then I think but I wanted to emphasize what are those in 4 or 5 points from each of you, that there are like 2,783 in entire India which are notified, not master plans or development plans till date. So does any of these master plans, as per your experience, have talked about as public health, or because you have mentioned somewhere in that model building bylaws, but if we see the model building bylaws, they just talk about provision of appropriate lighting or ventilation. That's the only relation, or somehow I find that to the public health. But what are those things that should be added into the master plans? In brief, in 1 or 2 points, each of you can add to it. Thank you.
In fact, see, Sujit, most of the master plan, they have adopted the norms and standard from UNDP guidance. So they give only area and population norms. Beside that, they don't give. Now we will get a lot of lessons from this pandemic, and hopefully once we draft the guidelines, pandemic resilient city guidelines, I think then the cities will be in a position to incorporate those recommendations in their respective master plan. But till now, they are only giving the area and population norms, and the master plans which are prepared for past 10 years, they have also given the spatial distribution of health facilities. Hello, Sujit.
Sujit, can I take over? Can I respond now? Sujit?
Yes, please. Sir.
You see, I personally feel that though maybe the guidelines have mentioning the slums and other areas, generally they are not recognized in the existing land use plan as slums. They are called, maybe they are something. So there is a need. They are authorized, unauthorized, whatever it is. They are of private land or public land. Slums and low-income areas have to be recognized when we do, and now because we use the latest technology. Fortunately, with this, under this umbrella, now we have been making this GIS-based master plan, and we have real land use data. It's not somebody's going place to place. I think they should be first recognized, and then the master plan should give us a solution. It's not necessary that they all have to be shifted. It's also not necessary that they have to be given 10 years. There could be something in between that. 10 years or 5 years, they'll not be shifted, they'll not be demolished. Some kind of, these kind of things have to come. And Ahmedabad master plan, it seems, has now recognized some spaces or some zones for affordable housing. That is the kind of thing which we'll have to build into it. This is extremely slow process. So master plan have to become inclusive and sustainable. I think that is what, and now we have to add these resilient characteristics into our master. Master plan may not be the solution for city problem, but if you really want to do anything which is legal and statutory, master plan has to include that. If you I mean, even if you want to put a metro line, if it is not shown in the master, you cannot build it. So for that, I think you need these things to be included, and that is why urban poor is to be recognized in the development process, and that will also give us recognition. I think one of the things I must mention this to all the students. I see I am looking at all the people who are coming on TV.
Hello. Hello.
I think the connection is.
COVID-19. I have yet
Yes.
to see an architect or
Yeah.
urban planners coming on the team in the public spaces where now people are going and staying. I think we have a very important. I'm not saying medicals. Nobody is going to put petals on us. Nobody is going to put flowers on us because we don't go out and do this active participation. वो घर बनाया
Sir,
So your connection is bad. Yeah, network is bad.
You're not able to hear me?
Yeah, now we can.
Sorry.
Oh, he's gone.
All right.
Was the
I'm
it
saying
was
we
the
have to have.
So we can't see you.
Hear me?
The webcam is off.
the passion affected the internet
That's
connection.
okay. Can you hear me? Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah,
now,
yeah, we can hear you, but the webcam is off.
All right. Anyway, let me finish. What I'm saying is we have more planners have to go into become social issues, and that is will give us recognition as professionals. I'll stop at that. Sujit, you can take over.
Sure, that's, I think, yeah. And I think that's one of the important points that you mentioned, like we as a planners also need to be on forefront. I think we should have been also in the front line somehow in some way in taking some of the decisions, or I think that was missing as whole. If we see as a planning profession in entirety, I see that disconnection. But
there is one thing.
Okay, because of health, home and yes, sir.
Sujit?
Yeah, there's just one thing. I love action planning. So of course I'm very much a field person. But I also believe that planners should show also their success as planners if they can prevent the crises from coming or happening in the first place. So for us, the garland should also be we have had taken care of that before. If we had earmarked the lands and earmarked the things and facilities and things,
Yes.
and we should be invisible. We should almost often also be invisible. So, but I agree. I totally accept the spirit of what Professor Vaid is saying, that we need that passion, but we need it a couple of months or a couple of years before the problem happens, so that we don't have to show passion when because we should not be responders in this. By virtue of being planners, we are not supposed to be firefighters, although we often are in India, we know.
That's true. I think I'll ask this question but you have mentioned already, even when some of the comments from participants also came with the similar question, like urban density is a lot in a discussion where in urban forums, and you have also talked about like there is not exactly the density which is playing the role in, the COVID, it's not just the density, I know, but we have to do a healthy density, as you have mentioned, Sir Professor Chetan Bhai, sir. So what is, can you elaborate on that, and what should we add into our things? Like what could be the healthy density that we should consider, or what are the parameters, something like that?
I think that is something, secondly, I wanted to bring out, that unfortunately planners and architecture are becoming very intuition based. They are not taking decisions based on data. I think that is something as a profession, as urban planners as a profession, we'll have to build into system, taking decisions based on data. What now people are talking of this big data analytics. Where is that big data? The transport planner somehow tells us how the data is getting used for preparing the roads and the other planning things. How much reliable that data is, I really don't know. But we'll have to create data even for measuring SDGs. When the Niti Aayog goes to measure impact of SDG 11, we don't have certified data as urban planners. And that is why they don't use any data from our side. So somehow, as a profession, we have to develop some kind of data collection and analysis on timely basis. That should be next step in our research, which I have been telling NIU, and also I should bring it to TCPO. Data analysis का बहुत जरूरत है Srinivasan for urban planners. I have finished.
Yeah. So I think we will end somehow the questions somewhere here. But I want to ask this major question that it will be a very good question, I think, for all of us as the students or participants. Like major percentage of even today's webinar attendees are students and from many places. What do you think are like 3 most important aspects or points to our generation of planners that we should keep in our mind post this pandemic? So yeah, all of you.
I am unable to hear.
I think anyone.
Sujit.
Okay, can you hear me?
No.
I can hear you. Antrim, can you hear us?
Yeah, clearly. I can hear everybody.
So I think Chetan sir, you can start and then we'll go to
Yeah, I can hear.
Urban plan, as urban planner, I think it is not that we can only go in one direction. I always think this is not, you can go in government sector, you can become a consultant, you can work with the NGO, and you can teach. There are 4 different roles in urban planner, and that is the fun of being an urban planner. You can do, and I have done this all 4 at different times in my life. So you can do all 4, and each one will tell you what kind of skills you require. But one thing we have to be good communication expert, both oral and writing. I think that is very important. We need to develop skills where we can do oral and written communication. We need to able to look at data analysis and tell what it means. It's just not putting graphs of data, but how does that connect? So if I tell you what is the income distribution of households in income, you should be able to translate it in sizes of houses which are feasible or which are affordable for that kind of income. So data analysis would be second. Third thing, obviously, everybody should be savvy with the technology. We all have to become more savvy with the technology. People at my generation could do without it, but now GIS is just the beginning. I mean, GIS should be big. Like AutoCAD used to be for architecture before. They are also getting into. I realize that if the student in architecture knows BIM, he gets a job very early, even outside the country. I think that's a must. Similarly, we'll have to find out what are those software which we need to learn. And then also people have to pick up on the job. And the 4th is, don't do only jugaad. This is my problem with SPA Delhi. Hamare bachche jugaad bahut acha karte. This comment is not for you. You are much more than that. But I'm generally, SPA Delhi does very good jugaad. SPA Bhopal does a lot of good technology. GIS, BIS बहुत अच्छा आता है. उनको जुगाड़ नहीं आता. We have to match these 2. Sujit, you are from SPA Bhopal, am I right?
Yeah, luckily I am from both of the colleges right now. So
I was the director of both these
I'm from
institutes.
SPA Bhopal and now.
I taught
what I'm saying is,
first semester, bro.
So what we want is this whole, both should be together. You should be able to use the technology and analysis and also do this kind of smart, I will call it not jugaad, but smart approach. Both.
Sir, you have jokingly mentioned about jugaad, but I think you also have to market yourself. That is very much important. he has mentioned about communication skills. He has mentioned about the analytical skills. Based on my experience, because I have been visiting IIT Roorkee, CEPT University, SPA Vijayawada, Bhopal, and Delhi. But somewhere what I found that CEPT University is a little bit better in their marketing skills. And in fact, sir, in National Urban Observatory team, I think around there are 12 out of 12, 10 students are from CEPT University. And they could get job immediately after passing out the MPlan. So somewhere we'll have to really develop our marketing skills. In fact, I also, whosoever take guidance from me, I also help them to get the job, and that's the most, most serious concern. That all the planners, M planner or B planner, they must get. And recently, sir, even in fact, government of Bihar, they advertise post of city manager. Around 150 city managers they require. And most of the city managers are going to work in all these missions only in PIUs. But unfortunately, they have they have not mentioned about B plan. They have mentioned about either M plan or MBA in urban management. So I think the B planners also need to. I have no, I have no doubt in their capabilities. I mean, B planners are exceptional. I mean, they understand, and in fact, students sometimes they help me also for if they want to give any inputs. And right now there are around 6 interns from SPA Delhi who are going to work under our guidance, and some more university students have also approached us. And let us hope, sir, we can do. And TCPO, in fact, whatever facilitation we can do, I mean, ensure, we will definitely do.
Sujit, we could close it unless you have something.
Yeah, I am just going through the questions from the attendees, so we can answer a few. I mean, we can ask few questions if we can see. This question I think is from Shreya Mishra. She asks like, how core commercial areas will be channelized for social distancing? So I mean, the social distancing norm in entire, because this is again important in planning perspective post COVID. So how we need to manage social distancing? It's just this question is coming from there, right, for commercial areas, but also some other questions asked like even in public transport sector. So can you any one of you can answer it, and it can be brief. Yeah.
Srinivas, you could. Antrim, you know the answer?
Sir, answer. I mean, it's only two. It has to be enforcement as well as awareness. It's a combination of both enforcement and awareness. How Kerala and cities they can ensure social distancing? Why can't cities in northern India? You just see the moment they open liquor shop, I mean they went berserk. What you will say, not at all bothered about the social distancing. I think it's a combination of both. You compare Delhi with UP cities. At least because of enforcement, they have been able to maintain at least 1.5 meters social distancing. It again, I will conclude that enforcement as well as awareness, that you'll have to really ensure.
Yes, I have nothing to add here.
If not, we can move to next question.
Yes.
Hello. Can you?
Yes, Sujit, we can hear you.
Yeah. So there are different questions. I mean, I'm going just through because there are lots of questions, and yeah. There are like some of the discussion points. Again, we have talked many of the points actually today. So there is one question which asks like, is there any fast track department or other provisions which is set up to deal with situation? I mean, post COVID situation, like there will be any authority or something which will be monitoring it or something like that. As per your knowledge, that's there in ministry or somewhere. I think that's the question that someone asked. Shubham is asking. Yeah.
Uh, Sir, can you quote the example of Kochi city, sir?
Kochi, I mean, after post-COVID, there are no specific actions taken in this. And what I expect is immediately the demand for going for new buildings and new approvals is going to be much less. It's not going to be demand. Demand is going to, and people will be just completing what projects they already have completed, started. If you expect new projects and new systems to unfold, is I think too early to decide.
Actually, sir,
It's a good. Sorry, no, please.
No,
I finished, Antrim.
Okay. No, I mean, I think Shubham is asking in terms of whether some dedicated organization or something is going to be put in the post-COVID situation to tackle full spectrum of concerns regarding a pandemic kind of thing, right? And I don't know, definitely nothing is on the cards here in terms of having a new kind of setup. They would perhaps operate through the existing ones with a mix of epidemiology, related things, urban development, and disaster management. And it is perhaps worthwhile. The question is valid in the sense to wonder whether something like that should be, because if instances of communicable infectious diseases are going to happen again and again, pretty much like how the incidence of cyclones strengthened the disaster management lobby in Orissa. This may just require some sort of a very dedicated and empowered thing, so that arbitrary things are not done. Because what is happening in COVID also is a substantial curtailment of liberations, right? And like say with the earlier question, unfortunately, in naturally crowded places like marketplaces and bazaars and all, it would definitely awareness, but the fail-safe would be a combination of enforcement and surveillance. A lot of post-COVID would be surveillance, to the extent that surveillance will almost become normalized, and also depending on how feudal the behavior may be in different places, the enforcement will tend to be very feudalistic, and the surveillance would be taken for granted. So it is perhaps worthwhile to have a dedicated organization which would have its own SOPs and protocols that what you is not. You will not then put, let's say, direct police cops for enforcement. Like in disaster, you have the workers of the of disaster pool, the disaster relief people come in. So similarly for this, that would also relieve perhaps pressure on the frontline workers in this, because right now, truly, they are very spread. So either one strengthens the public health tremendously, or one has a dedicated organization that continuously monitors and is ready for this kind of thing. It could be, it is not done yet, but it could be worthwhile. I'm done.
Yeah.
I think
we will end by that. Yeah. Is anything else? So I'll give the stage to Trisha.
Sujit,
Yes, sir. You want to add something?
Whatever questions, can you save those questions which you have, which you have received through chat? Question and answers. Can you save those?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sure. We will. Yeah, I also want to say we will forward the questions to you also, which we can, like some of the questions which you might also answer, because we have the names who are asking those questions and also email. So yeah. So over to you, Trisha.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you so much. This webinar has been extremely informative, especially for me, since I'm still a student and I'm studying B-Plan second year. So this has been extremely informative. I really hope that we can take this information forward and really figure out maybe how to go about this thing in the future, especially because of the crisis going on right now, and hopefully learn how to eliminate all or at least most vulnerabilities and I really thank all the panelists, Chetan Vadya sir and Antarin sir and Srinivas sir for accepting the invite to speak at the webinar. And also, I'm really thankful to the whole NOSPlan team and ACPN team, Vishesh and Sujit and also Bhavita. And yeah, I just want to end there. And I also, also by thanking the attendees. We've had quite a few attendees attend the webinar. So just, yes, thank you very much for speaking.
So yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
day.
you so much. Thank you.
Stay safe and
Thank